and welcome back to The Tonight Show. I'm Kimmy Gallen, and today we'll be welcoming a very special guest. Please put your hands together for the Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
Hello, hello. Nice to be on the show.
Nice. Thank you for coming. So, what exactly happened on June 28th of 1914?
Well, me and my wife were in Sarajevo when we were assassinated by a Serbian nationalist. It was the immediate cause of World War I.
That's very, I'm sorry. That must have been hard for you.
Yeah.
So, what were the causes that were immediate?
Well, there was militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism.
Nice to know. What are some examples of them?
Well, some examples of militarism is, well, all the European countries were so tense, and some countries started building up their armies, so other countries thought they needed to build up their armies too, and that led to, and then the military really was pushing for war. And then with alliances, people like Russia and Serbia and France and Great Britain started getting aligned, and soon all these countries were aligned with other countries, so if one country went to war, they'd all be going to war. And then with imperialism, there was, before World War I, the European countries had imperialized Asia and Africa, and they had little colonies there, and some countries were still mad at each other over which countries got which colonies, and that kind of pushed for war. And then with nationalism, people just had such a strong pride for their country, they were willing to do anything, even go to war for it.
That's very interesting. Well, it was great to have you.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. Hello, and welcome back to The Tonight Show. Today I will be joined by two soldiers who fought in World War I. Welcome.
It's nice to be here.
So what was it like in the trenches?
Well, I got trench foot and my foot fell off.
I got trench fever and barely survived.
Yeah, and one of our dear friends died and got eaten by rats the size of a cat.
They were brown rats, to be exact.
Wow, that sounds really hard for you guys.
Yeah.
So I heard there were two fronts during the battle. Can you tell me more about them?
Yeah, there was the Eastern Front and the Western Front. In the Western Front, well, let's just say Germany had this idea called the Schlieffen Plan. And that's when they'd go and attack France really fast and then hurry and go attack Russia, because they were fighting a war on two fronts. And sadly it failed, because in France, the Allied soldiers met them with reinforcements, and they kind of just got in a stalemate, and that's where the Western Front kind of is. And then the Eastern Front, Russia launched an attack on Germany and Austria-Hungary, and then when, well, let's just say Russia got in a little too over their heads, and whenever they attacked, Austria-Hungary and Germany attacked pretty hard back, and then they were kind of just at a stalemate right there. And it was bad for Russia because they couldn't get any goods in or out, so they were kind of slowly running out of ammunition and food.
That sounds really hard, but thank you for joining us today.
Oh yeah, thank you for having us.
Hello and welcome back. Today we will be joined by our 28th President, Woodrow Wilson.
Hello, nice
Hello.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So the U.S. wasn't in the war at first, was it?
No, it was not.
So how did they get in the war?
Well, you see, the Germans, they have these little things called U-boats that are like submarines that were new during this war. And one of the passenger ships, the Lusitania, contained American citizens on it. And at this time, America didn't want any part of the war, you know? And so, it's a passenger ship, which means it just had regular people on it. And the U-boats decided to hit it down and sink it, and it killed many Americans. And this angered the U.S. But that wasn't the whole story. Later, we found out that Germany was sending a note to New Mexico. It's called the Zimmerman Note. and it was telling New Mexico if they fought the U.S. and held them back, Germany after the war would help them get their territory back that the U.S. had taken. And so the U.S. didn't know about this, but Great Britain intercepted that note and let the U.S. know. And after that, that was the last straw. And the U.S., we joined the war on the side of the Allied powers. And that's how the U.S. entered the war.
That is a very interesting story. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh yes, thank you for having me.
And welcome back to the Tonight Show. Today we will be accompanied by a woman who had experiences as a citizen in World War I.
Hi, nice to
Hello,
meet you.
nice to meet you. So what happened, what was it like at home?
Well, at home during the war, since all the men were gone, a lot of the women had to step up and do works in factories and shops and stuff like that. We also had to do rationing because the government didn't have a lot of supplies, so we had to save as much stuff as we can, like bread.
What exactly is a total war?
Well, during World War I, when we entered, it became a total war, which is when the government takes over the economy. And when the government took over, they kind of take over factories and all kinds of stuff like that. And since, and when they took over the factories, they were making ammunition and all kinds of things the men would need in the war. So many women got jobs in factories, and unemployment was almost not heard of. And it was cool for me as a woman because this was a small change in how women were seen, and it started the movement of women's rights.
That is very interesting. Well, it was happy to have you today.
Happy to have you too.
Hello and welcome back to the Tonight Show. Today we will be joined by a special guest, Vladimir Lenin. Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So why did you withdraw from the war?
Well, Russia was having a few problems during World War I. They had a super high casualty number of about 5.5 million people, and that's a lot. And we also had a shortage of ammunition and food and other goods because we couldn't get them through because of the Germany and the Eastern Front. But also people were just unhappy with the war and were not supporting anymore. But during that time, we put in a different government to try and settle things. But then me, Vladimir Lenin, I went and I took over that put in place government, and I decided to withdraw us from the war because it was just hurting our country. And when I did that, it was the start of me creating what will be known as the Soviet Union.
That is very nice. Well, it was great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Hello and welcome back to the Tonight Show. Today we will be joined for our final guest, history expert Allie Sanderson.
Hi, Kimmy.
Hello, Allie. Welcome to the show. So what is the 14-point plan?
So the 14-point plan was kind of Woodrow Wilson. It was his plan for the end of the war because the Second Battle of Marne just happened after Russia withdrew from the war, and Germany goes to attack France, and they're trying again, kind of like the Schlieffen Plan, and they go and try to attack France, but they are met by the Allied powers and the fresh U.S. troops that have just come because the U.S. has entered the war. And at this point, the Central Powers are just kind of starting to give up, and slowly they're kind of like surrendering. And Germany, their soldiers are just tired and they don't want to fight anymore because how long the war's been going on. And this is kind of the end of the war when the Central Powers get defeated in the Second Battle of Marne. And then with this, Woodrow Wilson comes up with the 14-point plan, which is his plan for after the war, and his goals are world peace, and he just wants peace in the world. But and that's kind of what he tries to bring in to the Treaty of Versailles, which is the peace treaty that they're trying to make. But France and Britain, They were in this war for a long time, and they're really tired, and they don't care about peace. They just want revenge on Germany, because Germany was really ruthless, and they just attacked the French and British a lot and killed a lot of their men, so they just want revenge.
That is a very interesting story. So, if you could describe the war in one word, what would it be?
I would just say unnecessary, because during this war, nothing was really accomplished. There wasn't a big, important reason that this even really had to happen. And even at the end, after the Treaty of Versailles, the U.S. doesn't even sign it. And they come up with their own, and there's a bunch of different treaties and documents that have to be made before there even really is the end of the war even really comes. And they described this war as, at the end, a peace built on quicksand. And even though they found peace, it's not going to last. And this whole war just didn't seem like it really needed to happen, because there wasn't this big pressing problem. And at the end, nothing was accomplished. So, yeah, I would just say unnecessary.
Thank you for coming, and it was great to have you.
Thank you!
I'm Kimmy Gallen, and this was The Tonight Show.